Hello, hello, good afternoon, teachers of Ukraine. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to wait a few moments to allow everyone to arrive. And as we're doing that, please, in the chat box, let us know where you are joining us from today. And make sure when you are replying, make sure you're replying to everyone rather than just to the hosts and panelists. Hi, Oksana from Dnipro, Anton from Lutsk, Ivana friends here from all over Poltava. Hi, Natalia from Kharkiv. Hi, Olena, I think, or maybe it's an Oksana from Odessa, or Victoria from Odessa, Mykolaiv. Hi, Anna. Hi, Oksana from Melitopol. There we go. Wonderful. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us today for today's Young Learner Conference in cooperation with Lingvist and National Geographic Learning. My name is Alex Warren. I'm the I'm the Academic Services Manager for Europe and the Middle East and North Africa. I'm joined today by Alona from Lingvist, who I'm sure you're all very familiar with. And also my colleague, Catherine Hollings, who will be taking the second session today. So we've already discovered the chat. This will be very useful throughout the whole session. Anybody who's been to my webinars before know that I like to keep you involved. I like to keep you busy. So glad that you found the chat already. If you do any very specific questions that you want answered, please pop them in the Q&A box rather than the chat, because the chat goes by very, very quickly. In terms of the structure of today's session, I will be handing over to Alona very shortly for a brief introduction from her. I will then do my session from around 10 past the hour until the top of the hour, and then we'll have a short break, and then Catherine will take over for her session. I do want to make a quick point about internet connections. I know that the internet can be very iffy at the moment for you guys, so please don't worry if you drop out at all. The session is being recorded, and you will be sent that recording tomorrow if you miss any. So please don't worry if the internet disappears or you have to pop out, you will get the recording. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to Alona and let her kick things off properly. But have a great conference, everybody.
Hi, thank you so much, Alex. Hello, everyone. I am Alona Havorova, and I am an ELT consultant in Lingvist company. And it's such a pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you so much for joining us. We know that it's particularly a challenging time for you with the power outrage and different unexpected obstacles. And yet you are here with us today, lots of you here. And we deeply appreciate your dedication, also your resilience and commitment to your students and willingness to keep learning and growing as professionals. It's such an amazing thing to see. So we are proud to have you here with us today. Just a couple of things we will discuss today, and you probably want to know from me. So I'm gonna quickly share the screen with you. So today is the National Geographic Learning Conference, as you know, and I'm gonna be talking about Lingvist just a little bit. So as far as you know, we are with you today for more than 17 years. And we are providing you with different kinds of literature. And we have more than 10,000 publishing materials for ELT teaching and learning. We do have a partnership program, and if you are interested to know about this program, you can contact me, specifically one from National Geographic Learning. You can be our partner too. More than 1,000 students are using our books in their classrooms, which is an amazing thing. We do have some special offers for different clients, and if you're interested also, feel free to let me know this. Annually, we held more than 2,050 webinars, so we are trying to keep up with everything you want to know. And we do have some wide range of publishing material to provide you with. It's English, it's German, French, Spanish, Italian, and Polish, and also we have some science. So these are the information. This is the information that you might want to know. This is my contact number and my email address. So if you want some recommendations about the books, or you do have some questions after this session, please feel free to contact me. And you might want to try out some books that we will be listening about today. So please feel free to contact me anytime you want. Also, let's talk about the certificates. So you will have your certificate within 1 working day. So it means that you will get them tomorrow. Well, the latest day is Monday in the morning, but hopefully it will be tomorrow if nothing happens, because we are here based in Ukraine. And if everything is all right, 1 working day and you will get your certificates. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I will see you after the session ends, after 2 sessions end. And I'm gonna give the floor to fantastic Alex Warren. Alex, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Alona. And again, thanks to everybody for joining. We're up to over 120 now, which is phenomenal. So thank you. So let's get sharing. Hopefully, everybody can see that okay. Can you give me a thumbs up? Or a yes, we can see the screen, Alex. Can we see that? Can you see the screen? Am I sharing correctly? Yes, thank you. Perfect. Lovely. Okay, so this first session is all about yes, I can. Building self-efficacy in the young learner classroom. So in terms of what we're going to cover in this session, I'm going to start off by just exploring the power of believing in yourself, this idea of self-efficacy, defining what it is, defining why it's so important, especially in the language learning classroom. And then we'll move on to lots of different ways in which you can help to develop your students' self-efficacy. But I want to start with a little story. And it might be a story that you're familiar with, because it's a story about this young man. Now, I'm sure you all recognize this person, but just to avoid any confusion, can someone in the chat box let me know who this person is? Or at least, okay, there we go, Ron. Ron Weasley from the Harry Potter books, or indeed the films. And there's a great scene from Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince where Harry tricks Ron into believing that he's drunk this special lucky potion called Felix Felicis. So Ron's really nervous before the match, big Quidditch match. And Harry's like, okay, don't worry, Ron. Look, I'm going to give you this potion, and it's going to help you do brilliantly throughout the whole Quidditch match. And sure enough, Ron goes out and he has the Quidditch match of his life. He is the star player without question, saving goal after goal. Because he thought he'd drunk this lucky charm drink, that he would be successful whatever he did. So everything he did, he thought, yeah, I'm going to do it well because I've drunk the lucky potion. But, as you probably know, Ron hadn't drunk that potion. He just believed that he had drunk the lucky potion. There was no magic at work. His success in that game of Quidditch was all down to his power of self-belief. He believed in himself because he'd had this lucky potion. And that belief that we can succeed no matter what is what we call self-efficacy. And this example of Ron in Harry Potter is a really great example of self-efficacy at work. But what exactly is self-efficacy? Where did this idea come from? What is the theory behind it? So it goes all the way back to the works of Arthur Bandura back in the 1970s. And he developed this cognitive or social cognitive theory, which basically says that an individual's belief in their own ability greatly influences their motivation, their behavior, and their level of success. And in Bandura's own words, yeah, that belief in ability to succeed in achieving an outcome or reaching a goal. It's having the confidence to know you can do whatever you set your mind to by managing how you think, how you feel, how you behave. And like I say, that can create huge motivation within the classroom. And without question, the question I get asked more than any other, wherever I am in the world, is how can I motivate my learners? How can I engage my learners? And by no means is there a single answer to that question. There are many answers. But one of them is certainly by developing their self-efficacy, their belief in themselves. So I want you to take a moment to reflect for a moment about self-efficacy that you've had as a teacher. And I've got some questions I'd like you to think about and maybe to share your answers in the chat box if you feel confident or comfortable in doing so. So I want you to think about a personal success story related to your time as a teacher. And I want you to think about what helped you to be successful in this and how it made you feel when you were successful. But also, how did it impact on your own teaching? How did success impact your ability to teach better, more effectively? So take a moment to reflect. And when you're ready, put something in the chat box if you feel comfortable doing so. And, you know, certainly as a teacher, I'm sure we've all had these experiences where there's a time in our career, maybe when we're just starting out, when we're less confident, when something just clicks, something just happens. And you come out and it's just the best lesson ever. And you're feeling great about it. But what helped you to be successful in that? Of course, you're feeling great about it. And it should, hopefully, have a positive impact on you going forwards. Right, so of course, winning in contests help you to believe in yourself, absolutely. Or if you do particularly well in a test, from a student perspective, absolutely. And like I say, as teachers, we always have these incidents or these critical incidents in our classes where we have a wow moment, where we think, wow, yeah, I can do this. That worked really well. What made it work well? So, you know, it does impact on our teaching tremendously. Okay, so thank you, Yevgenia, there, saying when I'm gaining children's focus, it makes me feel good. It helps you to feel better about yourself as a teacher and your ability to teach. I think it's human nature in many respects to have self-doubt. You know, we all have self-doubt at some point. Am I doing things the right way? Are my students enjoying their classes? But when we know that that's going well, we have the confidence, we have the belief. And I love that, Oksana, the children's smiles and warmth is hugely rewarding for us as teachers and impacts positively on our experience of teaching. Okay, good. Thank you for that. So why is self-efficacy so important in the classroom? There are many, many benefits on this, and there's been a lot of research since Bandura's original study. Certainly, there's been a growing interest in self-efficacy beliefs within the field of second language learning in the last 10 to 15 years, and there's been a lot of research on it from organizations like the OECD and their PISA reports. And the different research suggests different impacts that it has. So what are these impacts? Well, first of all, there is a very clear connection between an increase in motivation and student achievement. Because think about it, if you're feeling confident about yourself, if you're feeling good about being able to do something and your ability to be successful, that's motivating. And the motivation in itself is a driver for student achievement. So it's a cycle, it's a virtuous cycle. We achieve well, it makes us feel good. It makes us feel good, it increases our motivation. It makes us do better the next time. Right? And yeah, it is an awesome picture, right, Alla? So much excitement going on in that picture. And as Julie Waddington points out in her article on self-efficacy in the ELT journal, work focusing on learner self-efficacy has helped stress the link between student self-efficacy beliefs and motivation and achievement in foreign language learning. So again, going back to that question I get asked a lot, how can I improve my students' motivation? Work on their self-efficacy, their belief in themselves. It is such a powerful resource. What else? It also facilitates high levels of participation, in essentially ensuring that the class is more inclusive of all students, not just the weak, strong ones, but the ones in the middle, the ones who maybe are shyer, quieter as well. Because if we're giving them that belief in themselves, they're more likely to be involved in the lesson. And if there's more of an increase in participation, there's also an increase in willingness to experiment with new ideas. And there's more effort as well from the learners. So this is from separate research by Bandura. Learners with high levels of self-efficacy choose more challenging tasks, persist on them for longer, attribute outcomes to their own controllable efforts or strategies, and hence achieve more highly. So it develops more learner autonomy as well in that respect. Belief that I can do this. I'm going to try new things out. It makes them better language learners. So here, you're absolutely right. We'll come on to that a little bit later for sure. Well, it kind of links in here actually, but it fosters emotional health and well-being. We've talked before at conferences a lot about social and emotional learning, which has been a huge trend since post-COVID years. And absolutely it's still the case, right? So, you know, learners with low self-efficacy are going to struggle. If we don't believe they can achieve a desired outcome from their actions, they have little or no incentive. So it's about building them up, making them feel good about themselves. Because if we can do that, it reduces that risk of failure, that fear of failure that so many students have. And, you know, we see this all the time in classes. Students don't like to speak in their English classes because they don't want to make mistakes. They're scared of making errors, maybe of other students laughing if they make a mistake. But having high self-efficacy reduces that fear of failure. It allows them to take risks. So lots and lots of benefits of focusing on building our student self-efficacy. Quick question for you guys. Do we want all of these things for our learners? Let me know in the chat box. Or if there are reaction buttons, use the reaction buttons. Do we want all of the things? Yes, of course we do. Thank you, Yulia. Thank you, Oksana. Without question. But not just yes. Yes. With big exclamation marks. Of course we want all of these things for our students. Is it easy to achieve? Not necessarily, because of course every student is different, but we can have an impact on it. Okay, we can influence our learners' level of self-efficacy. Now, before I sort of go into my answers to this question, I'm interested to know what you already do. How do you try to influence your learners' own belief in themselves, their own self-efficacy? Because you might think is a little bit sort of a juxtaposition. You know, self-efficacy comes from within. How can a teacher help a student's self-efficacy? We definitely can. But I want to know how you do it. Any suggestions in the chat box? How do you make your students feel confident about themselves and their ability to use English effectively? Okay, yeah, really good suggestion there. Yeah, through differentiated tasks, tasks which are leveled to different abilities of students in the class. That means that everybody can succeed or see success at their particular level. Great response, thank you. Okay, yeah, as well, Regina, knowing what they're interested in and getting them or using that as a basis for the lessons, absolutely. They'll make them feel good about themselves. And absolutely, you know, there's a whole other talks on differentiation, facilitating self-efficacy. But yeah, really good point. Right, you have any verbal positive assessment and feedback without question. I've got a great quote later on that kind of stresses that. Okay, so let's see what Bandura said. So in his original kind of paper on self-efficacy, he actually points out 4 separate things, but we only have time today to look at 3 of them. The first one he talks about is this idea of mastery or performance experience. And I'll go into what all these mean in a moment. He also talks about what we call the vicarious experience. And then finally, a verbal persuasion, which links to what Natalia said just now, but also what Yevgenia said as well about positive assessment. There was a 4th thing on his list, and that was about the social environment. And that links very closely to social and emotional learning. Because we've spoken about that before in depth and at length, I'm not including it today because otherwise we'd be here for a really, really long time. So look, let's look at this idea of mastery, performance, and experience first of all. What do we mean by this? Essentially, what we mean by this is that if students are successful at doing something, it shows them that they can do it. Again, it's that virtuous cycle. And as Bandura points out in another paper from 97, it is the most influential source of efficacy because they provide the most authentic evidence of whether one can muster whatever it takes to succeed. Success builds a robust belief in one's personal efficacy. Failure undermines it. So once they've experienced success at doing something, it builds that confidence. It believes that belief that, hey, I've been successful once, I can be successful again. I can do this. And it's like with anything in life, success breeds success. We thrive on it. It's human nature. We're successful, we want to be more successful. And we're going to work at it, we're going to take risks, we're going to improve. But the question is though, how as teachers can we set our students up for success? How can we help them to experience the success that they need to build their own confidence? Well, there are a number of different ways in which we can do this, okay? And we'll look at different ways, including effective scaffolding, success criteria, language frames, and also the role of repetition. So the first thing there is this idea of scaffolding a task. to help them to be successful. So this is a task that students have to do at the end of a lesson. They have to work in pairs. They have to write sentences using I have never. So using the present perfect. Now, if we gave that to our students at the beginning of a class, say, here, do this activity, clearly they're not going to be successful because they haven't had the input. Therefore, we need to make sure that this is not the case for our learners. Because it is a daunting challenge. Hey, you're going to be doing this task, or I want you to do this task. How do students feel if they're in this position right now? Is it an achievable lesson outcome? No. And how does that make them feel? It makes them feel bad. It makes them feel anxious, nervous, definitely not confident. So how can we help them to achieve success? A simple answer, through scaffolding. If we can scaffold activities, especially for speaking tasks, it provides the structured support that students need to build their confidence and to develop their skills, to show them that they can achieve the goal. And by managing, or by breaking this into manageable steps, into bite-sized chunks, it enables them to engage with the lessons, to understand the language that they need to achieve it. And yes, a lot of you mentioned praise and effort. We're going to come to that later on, without question. So to achieve the goal, we have to scaffold those learning activities to facilitate success. But notice how we've got scaffolding coming down the other side as well. That is the idea of the feedback and the assessment that is needed to reinforce that, that success that they have got. So looking at that activity we just had, where they had to do the speaking activity, how can we scaffold this? So this example comes from Look level 5, sort of A2 plus B1 level. So we can see here very clearly, at the beginning of the lesson, they're told what they will be able to do. And that in itself is positive reinforcement. You will be able to do these things. You will be able to use the present perfect to describe experiences. But of course, it's then how we scaffold it. It's about giving them clear grammar references, clear grammar definitions. Of course, as a teacher, we're going to present that in such a way to make it accessible and understandable to them. Once they've had that presentation of the grammar, we're going to give them lots of practice using it, controlled practice, getting them to feel confident using it in a controlled environment. Have you ever swum in the sea? Have you ever seen a penguin? Has your best friend ever sent you a postcard, etc.? Lots of controlled practice. Slightly freer practice. Have you ever done these things? Before letting them loose on that final task, where they have to use or transfer the language that they've learned to different scenarios. So that essentially the PPP approach, the presentation, the practice, the production, scaffolding of a lesson, is essentially setting students up for success in a spoken or indeed a written task. But look, all course books do that. All teachers know that. That's nothing new. But there are other steps that we can add to ensure further success. And one of my kind of favorite things to do and then to include are success criteria. Let me know in the chat box. Are success criteria something that you're familiar with? Are they something that you use regularly with your students? In fact, what even are success criteria? And how do they benefit learners? Let me know in the chat box. What is your understanding of success criteria when it comes to spoken production or indeed written production? Okay, everyone's gone quiet. That's okay. So essentially, a success criteria is a list of items that a teacher wants students to include in a piece of work, in a production piece of work. So written work, spoken work. So we'll do an example in a moment, but it's literally just a list of things that I want you to include. And it does two things. First of all, it helps students understand what is expected of them. It enables them to monitor their progress and experience a sense of achievement. This clarity fosters self-efficacy as students build confidence in their ability to meet goals when they know what success looks like. So it's telling them to be successful, you need to include this, 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 and this. So for example, I want you to imagine that your students are going to write a biography of their hero. So it's a piece of writing. What success criteria could you include? And I want to stress here is could you include? It's not prescriptive at all. It can vary in format completely. So if your students this is level 6, this is kind of A2 plus B1 level again, what would you want your students to include and to do well in writing a biography? Do you think? Think about grammar. Think about the structure, the format. Right. So the format, important events, grammar, past simple. Right. So you should be accurately using past simple. Irregular verbs as well. Narrative tenses, absolutely. Going beyond just the past simple, maybe. Thank you, Vera. Linking words, for sure. If you're talking about biography, you need linking words. After that, following that, next, etc. Good structure. So the good structure is provided by the linking words. Maybe we want to say that there are a certain amount of paragraphs. There should be 3 paragraphs. For it to be successful, you need to have good punctuation. Commas, full stops, capital letters. Ability to create associations, potentially. Thank you, Natalie. I mean, look, there could be anything and everything on this list, okay? What do I have? I have things like, there should be information about where they're from, when they're born, and what they do. So that basic information you should include. It should also have a topic sentence. My hero is this person. They were born, blah, 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 etc. I would say they should include at least 3 interesting facts about this person. They need to say why. Why is this person your hero? It's great talking about them, but why is this person your hero? Use the past simple. Indeed, if they are still alive, we should be using present perfect. So thinking about the tenses used. They should use time expressions, linking words. Cohesion, of course, thank you, Mahata and Katerina. Paragraphs, punctuation, spelling, and length of text. Right, at least 100 words. So when students have got this list, this success criteria, as they're writing in this case, they can tick these things off. Have I included 3 interesting facts? Have I used the past simple? Have I got 3 paragraphs? Have I checked my spelling? And if they're doing this as they're writing it or self-checking and they're ticking these things off, they know that they're being successful. So the success criteria are leading students to be more successful, facilitating greater success for those. And coming back to what somebody said earlier about differentiation, you can differentiate these success criteria. You'll notice that in a lot of them, I've written the word at least. Well, in fact, a couple of them I've written at least. That lends itself to differentiation. I want everyone to do at least that, but the stronger ones to do more. Another way of doing success criteria is using a must, should, and could approach. So everyone must include these things. You should try and do these things if you can. So the stronger ones should be doing this. And the really strong ones could be adding in these additional informations, etc. Now, I often get asked, how many success criteria should I have? It will depend on your class. It'll depend on your goals for the lesson. If your goal is on punctuation, you want to make sure that's on your list. But if your goal is on sort of experimenting with new language, maybe punctuation is less important. Generally speaking, and it is level dependent, I would have between 5 and 8 different success criteria. Like I said, level dependent and goal dependent. But the point is, it scaffolds that final task for the learners. It sets them up for success. And in doing so, it builds that self-efficacy, belief in self that I can do this. Okay, that's one thing you could do. Another thing you could do as well for spoken activities, on top of the scaffolding of the normal lesson, is to provide your learners with language frames. What do I mean by a language frame? Any suggestions in the chat box, please? What do you think a language frame is? And these can be used for both spoken and written work as well. Any suggestions? Okay, I'm going to help you out a little bit. So, language frames are essentially phrases that our students can use to do a task. It's not necessarily focusing on the grammar, but they're tasks or phrases that can be used on a repeated basis on different contexts. So on a basic level, on this particular activity here, they are in a pizza restaurant and they have to order food. So the language frames that we can provide them with include things like this. So we've got the waiter language frames, we have the customer language frames. And by giving them this language, it allows them to, or allows for all students to complete the task in a successful manner. Yes, they've got to add in their own ideas and own information, but a lot of the languages have been provided for them. So they can, in this case, role play the task much more effectively, much more successfully. So another example might be this. This is some language frames that you might use for a presentation for your students. So phrases like, thank you all for coming. Today I'm going to talk about first of all, secondly. So there's language there for structuring and signposting. There's language there for talking about different aspects of the presentation, to conclude, to sum up, etc. Okay, so I'm sure you have these in your classrooms anyway, you know, all around the board, around the classroom, little phrases that students can use regularly in the class. And of course, one thing students do a lot of in class is to discuss questions. So I want you to imagine that your students are having to discuss this question. What makes a good team? So in the chat box, I want you to tell me, what language frames would you provide for your students to help them to do this activity more successfully? So they're in groups, they're talking about this question. What makes a good team? What language frames could you provide? Think about phrases for maybe giving opinions, phrases for agreeing and disagreeing, phrases for turn taking. Yes, I can't pronounce the name there because it's not in Roman alphabet. But think about the phrases that we can give for them to be involved in the conversation. So, for example, I'll start. I think, brilliant. Thank you, Julia. In my opinion, I think, I believe that good listening makes a good team, for example. Yeah, really nice. That's a great start one. Let's do it together. Let's discuss. Who wants to start? Who wants to go first? To my mind. But of course, they may not agree. Or maybe they do agree. Oh, that's a really good idea. So it's reinforcing that. To my mind, to my opinion, or in my opinion. So all of these kind of things, I think, can be really helpful for a discussion, right? So turn taking, how about you? What do you think for turn taking? Responding to other people's opinions, that's a great idea. I completely agree. I think that too. If you want to interrupt, can I stop you for a second? Or if you're not sure, I'm not sure I understand. Can you repeat that? I disagree. Can you say that again? Etc. So by having these kind of language frames readily available to your students, they know that what they're saying is correct. And over time, every time you do a discussion activity, you make sure students have these, they're going to learn them. They're going to repeat them so many times by the end of an academic year that they're just there in their head. So lots of repetition there. But the point is they are inclusive. They provide a crutch to an extent for those weaker, shyer students to have a foothold in the classroom, in the conversations that their classmates are having. One more thing that I think is really important for ensuring success, especially in a spoken activity, is by giving them planning time. Giving students planning time before doing an activity, it improves their accuracy, it improves their confidence. And actually, studies on task-based language teaching shows that giving learners time to plan before speaking tasks significantly improves or enhances oral performance, and it reduces anxiety. Because planning allows them to organize their ideas, to organize language, which in turn leads to greater confidence when delivering or when being involved in a spoken activity. And that's true of anything in life. When we feel prepared, we perceive ourselves as being more capable, more able to do something, which increases our willingness to speak and to be involved. So remember, successfully completing a well-prepared speaking task in itself is one of the most powerful sources of self-efficacy. If we don't give them planning time, how can we expect them to be successful? and to experience success. So along with the success criteria, along with the language frames, give them a little bit of time to think about what they want to say. Make some notes. So for example, in this activity here is a group task or pair work task where they have to discuss how effective these different ideas would be for reducing litter. Now, if I gave this to my students and said, go, they're going to get nervous, anxious. Oh, what do I say? No, give them time. Let them brainstorm ideas of what they want to say. Fines for dropping litters. Good idea, but free drinking water in all public places. Best idea, etc. Allow them to note down words, ideas. Because that support when it comes to the speaking task will result in them being more successful, without question. And once they've done it once, successfully, they'll know that they can do it a second time successfully, or a similar task successfully. So it's just building it up incrementally. So there's many ways in which we as teachers can ensure our students are successful by setting them up for success through effective scaffolding, through language frames, through success criteria, through planning time, even through repetition. You know, you do the task once, you do it okay. You do it a second time, you do it better. You do it a third time, you do it even better. So embrace repetition as well. Don't be scared of it. Don't think students are going to get bored if they have to do the same task 3 times. They can do it 3 times, but with different people. Because every time you do a task with someone different, something new is created. So yes, they do this once with one partner. Do it with a second partner. Do it with a third partner. But of course, in that process, we are adding in feedback as well. Okay, so that's the first way in which we can do it and build efficacy. The second one is through this idea of vicarious experience. What is a vicarious experience? Essentially, it is seeing other people do something and you're thinking, oh, I can do that. And as Bandura points out, seeing people similar to yourself succeed by sustained effort raises their belief that they too possess the capabilities to master comparable activities to succeed. It's very much that case of, if they can do it, so can I. Now, one of my favorite things to do online, favorite things might be pushing it, but one thing that I often find myself doing is watching how-to videos on YouTube. In the chat box, give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, or yes or no. Do you watch how-to videos on YouTube when you don't know how to do something? Sometimes says Vera, yes, says Oksana. Yevgenia, no. Okay, lots of yeses coming through. Look, the reason I love how-to videos is because they're just done by ordinary people. People like me, people like you. They're nothing special. They're just normal people. So recently, I had to check how to change the headlight in my car. I wanted to check how to make sushi at home, but not have to follow some amazing chef, just a normal person. And being a dad to 2 children, I often have to do school projects with them. And I'm not an artistic person particularly. So I watch how-to videos on how to make animal masks with cardboard and paper mache. I watch how-to videos on how to design dioramas to help my students. Or to help my kids rather. And I'm looking at these people. Well, hey, they're normal. If they can do it, I can do it. And that makes me feel better about myself. So I want you to take a moment to reflect for a moment. putting this in a teaching context. And I want you to answer this question. How has observing a colleague, how has observing a colleague teach impacted on your teaching and your self-efficacy? Because believe me, observing your colleagues does have a powerful impact on your self-efficacy, because it allows you to see how they do it. People similar to you. And well, if they can do that like that, so can I. So how can it help you develop your self-efficacy? Well, seeing another teacher successfully manage a class or deliver a lesson, it provides a concrete example of what's possible. It helps you, again, to believe you. Well, it helps you to believe that if they can do it, I can do it. Hey, if that teacher can control that class, so can I. Of course, it's a great way to pick up new ideas as well. But also, I think it reduces uncertainty, especially if you're kind of a newer teacher. You can observe strategies in action, especially for challenging tasks. It reduces ambiguity and gives you practical ideas, like Vera says. It increases your confidence in your own ability. It builds your professional knowledge. You can gain an insight into classroom management, instructional techniques, problem-solving approaches. And that in turn can strengthen your sense of competence. And right, you can use their best ideas. And you know that they work because you've seen them work in your colleague's classroom. That gives you the belief, you the confidence that it's going to work in your classes. But I also think a big part of that kind of teacher observation or peer observation is having discussions with each other. You know, if I've had a colleague come in and watch my class and we're talking about it afterwards, they might say, oh, you did that really, really well. Or I love the way that you did that. I'm going to use that. So it works on both parties here. It reinforces your ability and your capability, but also in the person that you're observing, their ability to do things in class as well. So clearly there's real value in this idea of vicarious experience, of seeing other people do tasks successfully. And it's true in the classroom as well, right? You know, students, we get all the time, we put them into pairs, we put them into fours to do a task. And it's important to remember that all students can act as role models, let's say, or near peer role models in the language classroom, because all students have their strengths and weaknesses. So in this particular activity, it might be that first of all, the teacher models it, but then they choose one of the stronger students in the class to model it. And the other students can watch that student do it. Or it might be that we're just putting students into pairs or into fours, and they observe the other pair doing the task. If they can do it, I can do it. So there's many ways in which we can do that in the classroom, that we already do it in the classroom, actually, to be honest with you, by getting students to model activities. But it doesn't always have to be somebody in your class, right? One of my favorite features of the Look series is that we get to see children from other countries, other cultures, doing the tasks that your students are going to have to do. It can be really motivating for learners to see a student from Brazil or Egypt or somewhere in Europe doing the task. Again, if they can do it, why can't I? So look, let's watch an example of this. So we're going to watch a couple of students talking about a particular task. In this case, their cities. Okay. And hopefully the video works.
I'm Safia. I'm Indipila.
Oh, sorry.
What's the most popular city in your country?
Marrakesh. It's in the middle of Morocco. It's the fourth largest city in the country.
Why is it popular?
It's got lots of markets called souks and a famous square called Jama al-Fna. I visited it.
What can you do in Marrakesh?
You can go shopping in the souks. You can buy lots of different spices. In the square, you can drink traditional Moroccan tea, look at the storytellers, the acrobats, and the snake charmers. I've seen lots of snakes there.
What's the most popular city in your country?
It's Mexico City. It's the capital of Mexico. It's one of the biggest cities in the world. It's a fantastic city.
Why do people visit Mexico City?
It got lots of museums and galleries. It's modern, but it's also close to ancient sites like Teotihuacan. That was a big city with big pyramids. People built it thousands of years ago.
Do you like Mexico City?
Yes, I've been there many times. My grandparents live there. I like going to Xochimilco. You can go on a boat ride there.
Okay, you get the idea. So how do you think your students would respond to watching these near peers? Let me know in the chat box. What would their reaction be to watching these other students from other countries doing the tasks? Is it something that they'd like? Lots of hands going up, which I'm going to guess is yes. But let me know in the chat box. Yeah, they'd be excited, right, Anastasia? They'd be amazed to see their levels, right? So it's, oh my God, they're that age and they're that good. I can be that good. Right, they use the same phrases. It's interesting for them. They will be encouraged. Right, and that's the key thing here, Natalie. They'll be encouraged. They'll be motivated to try and reach the same levels. Now, it might be that you have other sources of kind of content. And something that I've done in the past, not necessarily of younger learners, but I'm a big fan of using Padlet for activities. And what I like to do is I get students, colleagues, or whatever, to do a task. So this is what I would do in class. I would get one class to do the activity, and I'd get them to post their videos on a Padlet. And I would then get my students to watch these near-peer role models doing the task. Now, it might be that you've done this in one year group and you want another year group or another class to see them doing it. But the point is creating a resource whereby students can see people very similar to themselves doing the activity. Okay, my time is coming to an end. I'm going to jump a couple of slides. Okay. But the point I want to make here is that the value of a near-peer role model cannot be overstated. There is strong evidence of their value for increasing motivation, excitement, risk-taking, and the amount of language used in the classroom. Clearly, near peers present a powerful option for effective language learning and for building that self-efficacy within our students. Right, Julia. Okay, last point of Bandura's, which is this idea of social persuasion. And this is not rocket science. Self-efficacy is influenced by encouragement and discouragement pertaining to our performance. Everyone likes to hear nice things said about them. It was great. It was amazing. Great job. It works so well. It makes us feel good. And conversely, if we're given bad feedback, it makes us feel bad. But as Amanda Marin points out, praise is one of the simplest and most powerful tools to engage and motivate your learners. When used effectively, it can change the behaviors of your students, improve their attitudes, It makes meaningful and appropriate praise even more important. But what I want to focus on here is the meaningful and appropriate praise. Because I think some teachers, they just give the same praise. Great job, good work, well done, love it, amazing, etc. But it's not very focused. And I think we need to be more focused in our praise to make it more meaningful and appropriate. And actually, there's three types of praise. There's personal praise, effort-based praise, and behavior-specific praise. So personal praise is really focusing on natural talents or skills that come easily to students. For example, a teacher might say, "You have a great accent," or "I love your accent." That's personal praise. Effort-based praise is the type of praise that emphasizes what students, or what they can control, the amount of effort they put in. So things like, "I'm really impressed with how hard you worked to produce this work." So focusing on that. And then behavior-specific praise is things like certain things that they do in class. So, I don't know, "Julia, thank you for the way you helped your partner. Julia, you listened really attentively. You were really helpful to your partner," etc., etc. So different types of praise. So look, let's give you a very quick test. I'm going to show you some praise, and I want you to tell me if it's personal, effort, or behavior. So just in the chat box, write personal, effort, or behavior, or just P, E, or B. Here we go. Number one. "I really liked how you stayed focused and used the sentence starters we practiced." E's, B's. I mean, there's some crossover, granted. For me, it's more about behavior. Because staying focused isn't necessarily about effort, it's about the behavior. But it could be B as well. E as well. So E or B is fine. Next one. "I love how enthusiastic you are about learning new words. It's great to see your curiosity and excitement for language." P or E? It's not really E, is it? It's about the enthusiasm here. So for me, it's personal. Because it's about the enthusiasm being shown. But it could also be behavior as well. Next one. "I love how you tried using new vocab in your answer. Taking risks will help you improve so much." Lots of E's there. Yeah. It's effort, but it's also behavior as well. It's rewarding the behavior of taking risks. Next one. "Great job listening carefully to your partner and asking a follow-up question." Thank you, Vera. Anyone else on this one? Yeah, it is B. It is behavior. And we've got one more. "You've become so much more confident in speaking tasks. I can see how much effort you've put in, and it's really paying off." Lots of B's, P's, E's. I mean, for me, it's a bit of P, bit of E. And last one. "You didn't give up even when that pronunciation was tricky. Your practice is really paying off." It's an easy one, right? You didn't give up. But effort, but also, I guess, to an extent, behavior. Okay. But the point I'm trying to make here is that these are not just one or two word phrases. Okay. I know teachers, they stick to phrases they use regularly. We need to be more specific about the praise that we give to our learners, because that is more meaningful to them. They want to know what was good, what you liked about the work, and that builds the confidence in the learners themselves. So look, I've run over time. I apologize. I'm going to have a shorter break. Sorry, Kat. But listen, we can promote high self-efficacy by scaffolding successful learning outcomes. So scaffolding the class, including success criteria, language frames, planning time. Set them up for success. Use near-peer role models for that vicarious experience. Remember, if they can do it, I can do it. So show them models of students similar to them doing the tasks. And then finally, we looked at the incorporating positive feedback as well, but making sure that it is clearly directed, that it has purpose, that it is specific. And the one that we didn't get to look at today was this idea of creating a positive learning environment. If students are within an environment that is positive, that everyone is supporting each other, then clearly it's going to be a good place to learn. It's going to make them feel more confident in the classroom. So listen, I'm going to finish with a quote that kind of brings us full circle back to Ron Weasley. And it's this: self-efficacy might not be a magic potion, but it is a valuable tool for getting students to believe that they can succeed. And certainly it's something that we should be looking to integrate into our classes as much as possible. And if we can do that, we're going to see a real change, a real difference in our students' belief in themselves. They'll have that self-efficacy that might lead into a growth mindset as well, to a related idea. So listen, thank you so much for listening to this first part of the conference. If there are any questions, please pop them in the quick Q&A box. I'll answer them during the break. But for reference, all of the content today came from Look, which is one of our Young Learner series. And you can find out more about Look using that QR code. Or indeed, I'm going to pop the link in the chat box. But listen, we'll take a very short break. So grab yourselves a tea, a coffee, a snack, whatever it is you need to keep yourself going. And we'll come back in 5 minutes. Sorry, Kat, I've given you less time. I'll give you 5 minutes before we start again with Kat, okay? And like I say, if there are any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat box and I'll be happy to answer them. And I will pause.
Splendid session, long session. So hi everybody, I hope you're all back from your break. My name is Catherine. I am an academic services consultant for National Geographic Learning, work with Alex on his team. And I am here today to talk to you about formative assessment for young learners. So let me just see if I can share my screen. Bear with me. Okay, and now I need to find the chat box. Chat box. Okay, can you see my screen, please? Great, thanks, Alex. Okay. Right, so without further ado, because I've got a lot of time to catch up on, I will move on. So, formative assessment. So historically, there's always been a focus more on summative assessment, so testing what students know at the end of a period of learning. But in the last 20 years or so, there's been much more of a push towards formative assessment, especially, as I'm sure you're all aware, in the young learner classroom. So the aims of this session is to look at what formative assessment is. I'm sure you all know very well, but just to make sure we're all on the same page. We'll then look at why it's so important. And then we'll spend much more time on how we can include it in our everyday teaching. So, what is it? What is formative assessment? Well, it is essentially assessment for learning. formative as opposed for assessment of learning, which would be your summative assessment. So in very simple terms, formative assessment allows the student, allows you, the teacher, to form a more detailed understanding of your students' abilities. And you can then use that understanding to adapt your classes as necessary according to your students' needs. So if you find your students haven't mastered a concept, what do? You reteach, or you add extra practice, you structure your future lessons accordingly, or the homework accordingly. So if we look at this image here, this diagram, and if we start at the top where it says, where is the learner going? So where do we want the learner to get to by the end of the course? And we can share those intentions, and we can share that success criteria that Alex spoke about in the previous session. We can share that with our students and or with their parents. And then we can look at where the learner is right now. Okay, we need to know where they're at the moment, and we do that by gaining evidence of their learning as they go along in the course. And then, of course, we need to look at how the learner can get to where we want them to be at the end of the course. And we can do that by providing them with feedback and helping them with the next steps. So it's all about that process, essentially. So to check we're all in the same place, and Alex, I hope you're still there, because I'll need you to launch the poll. Hope you're still there.
I'm here.
Good. So could you please launch the poll? I just want to check that we are all on the same page about what constitutes formative assessment. So in the poll, you'll see...
Can you see it?
Yeah, beginning of a sentence. I can see it anyway. And you just have to choose whether it is an example of summative or formative assessment. So, hope you're all filling in the poll. Can everybody see it?
Yeah, they're filling it in.
Good, good.
Give them about a minute or so, I think. We've had 6 out of 166 fill it in so far.
Come on, everyone.
Yeah.
They're probably still on their coffee break.
Maybe. No, we're up to 8% now of everyone doing it.
Okay.
We'll give you a minute. Certainly some of them are easier than others. Can you see the results coming in, Kat, or not?
I can't, no.
Okay,
So I might need you to help me.
Interestingly, there is some... Well, there's no clear-cut answers on any of them. So there's a bit of a split decision.
Okay, well, that means hopefully you will learn something today then.
Yeah, I mean, certainly even the first question, it's 73% for summative, 27% for formative. Number 2, 20% summative, 80% formative.
Okay.
Number 3, 90% summative, 13%. Oh, it's changing. Yeah, there's definitely split decisions there a little bit. And certainly I would say it does very much depend on perspective a lot of the time.
Yes. Yes, I mean, you can argue your points.
You could argue your points. Look, let's give you another 10 seconds. It's been running for nearly 2 minutes. And let's try and get 50 of you to like 25% of people. Come on, a few more.
Come on, everyone.
5, 4,
Get back
3,
for your coffee break.
2. Oh, we need one more person to do it. There we go, 25%. Right. I'm going to end the poll. And I'm going to share the results. So you should all be able to see those. Can you see those, Kat?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much. Thanks,
That's
Alex.
okay.
You can go and relax now.
Tell me when you want me to stop sharing.
Okay, not yet. Okay. So, thanks everyone. So, as Alex said, it does very much matter, what you then do with the results, of course, because if you take the results of any of these and then you then reteach or adjust your classes accordingly, then of course you could say they're all formative. But in general, if you're doing, number 1, a standardized proficiency test, like, for example, the Cambridge PET or FIRST or advanced, whatever, essentially what then happens is that's the end of the learning process. That you as a teacher aren't going to take their grades and then look at what they got right and wrong on that, unless you were using it as a progress test. But here I'm talking about, you know, the proper Cambridge exam. So I would say that's more of an example, as most of you have said, of summative assessment of learning. Number 2, a short quiz used to plan the next lesson. Obviously, there you're seeing where your students are at, what they've understood, and then you're going to take those results and adapt your teaching accordingly. So that's very much formative. The information you're receiving from that quiz is information for you. It's informing your next lesson, your teaching. So yeah, formative assessment. Number 3, an end of term exam that covers all the language skills. Well, the fact that it's at the very end of term suggests that probably you're not going to then have another class and, you know, do something with all those results and teach afterwards. So in general, it's a bit like the first one. It's an example of summative assessment. You can argue, which I suppose 11% of you that have said it's formative, that maybe, you know, the following school year you will do something with those results, in which case you could say it's formative. And number 4, teacher observation is usually going to be formative because you're normally, for example, in a speaking activity, you're walking around and monitoring and listening, and you're taking notes on things that they're doing really well, I hope, and things that maybe you need to do some work on. We'll talk about that a little bit later in this session. So in general, teacher observation during group work is normally going to be formative. Giving feedback is always formative. I don't see how we can argue that it's going to be summative there, because you're giving them feedback so that they can improve, so that you can work on things to help their learning journey. Okay. We can close this, Alex, thank you. Now you can go and relax. So thanks for that. It's really good to know, really useful to know where we're all at. So let's move on. Where are we? Here we are. Okay, so this is quite a nice definition of what formative assessment is. So it is the process of collecting and interpreting evidence for use by teachers and learners to decide where they are in their learning, where they need to go, and how best to get there. It is a process by which assessment information is used by the teachers to adjust their teaching strategies and by students to adjust their learning strategies. So as you can see, it's not just about you as the teacher, it's also, you know, putting some responsibility on the student. So we'll come back to this. So that was what formative assessment is. Okay, assessment for learning as opposed to assessment of learning. So why is it so important? Well, we've already mentioned quite a few of the reasons. I would like you, just on your own, in 1 minute, to write down. Have you all got pencils? I'd like you to write rather than type, if that's okay. Just write down as many reasons as possible why formative assessment is so important. Okay, for you as a teacher, for your students. So you have 1 minute starting from now to write down as many reasons as possible. Let's see if you have as many as me. Go. Thirty seconds left. Fifteen seconds. Oh, you're writing in the chat box. Okay, I didn't mean you had to write in the chat box, but thanks. Great. Okay, and stop. Time's up. Okay, so ignore the chat box for a minute, but thank you, everyone. I would like you just to tell me the number, if you were writing it down by pen or pencil, the number of reasons you have. How many reasons do you have? Do you have 1? Do you have 2? I have 9. How many do you have? Give me a number. 3, 5, 4, 5. Okay, 7, Natalia. Wow. Okay, great. Okay, and obviously we've already seen lots in the chat box, so that's fabulous. So let's just see progress, showing the progress. Great, great, great. Excellent. Very good. So these are the ones I have, which are very much in line with what you said. So formative assessment is so useful because it shows that it shows the student progress, which is what you said. Yeah, it makes it much more visible and more accurate as well, much more accurate than just those stressful summative end of term exams where who knows what might have happened that day. They might just be having a bad day. It also gauges learning on a regular basis and often a daily basis rather than just at the end. Gives a much more detailed overview of a student's ability. It's immediate and personalized feedback. We'll come back to this point a little later. As we've mentioned, it allows for remedial work or reteaching and reassessing. It's far less stressful for the students. They don't need to worry about that last minute cramming, drinking coffee all night for the last test, or thinking of excuses not to come to class on the day of the test. Increased learner engagement is motivating, it gets them involved. We'll see a little later how. It increases the students' awareness of their own strengths and weaknesses. So in a way, it's helping with their learner autonomy. Again, we'll come back to this. And lastly, the last point I had was that it enables us teachers to reflect on our own teaching. Because of course, if you're seeing that all the students are struggling with the conditionals, for example, or with some vocabulary or with a particular writing exercise, you need to adjust your teaching to help them, especially if, you know, it's all of them and it's the whole group. So it's really useful for us as well. Okay, so formative assessment, lots of reasons why it's great. The argument is, of course, sometimes that takes too long. It takes too long for us teachers. Doesn't need to. So what we're going to do now is look at the how. How can we include formative assessment in our everyday teaching? Okay, thankfully, it's really easy. There's so many different ways of conducting formative assessment. Some are more formal than others. And, you know, most course books, especially our course books, National Geographic Learning course books, they tend to have formative assessment activities, you know, built into them. They might not say they're formative assessment, might not be clearly signposted as that, but they're there. And what's really important to remember is that formative assessment can take place at the start of a lesson, during lesson, at the end, or of course also at the end of a unit of work. So that takes us to entry tickets. So entry tickets are fabulous. They are a way of using those minutes at the beginning of a class to find out what students remember, for example, about the lesson before. So while they're all, you know, sitting down and trying to focus, you can just put, for example, some questions on the board. This is just an example of an entry ticket going into, so a ticket into the lesson or the topic you're going to be talking about. So for example, if the previous lesson you'd been talking about snow animals, you could ask them simply, how much can you remember from the last lesson? You can do it orally, you can put it on the board, you can get them working in pairs and just monitor. You can get them writing if you want, do some snack writing. It's all a great way of seeing how much they remember from the previous lesson. Or of course, if you're not reflecting on what they've already learnt, you're just reflecting on what you're going to be doing, see how much they know already. What do you already know about animals that live in the snow? You could do a big class brainstorming activity, or again, in pair work, group work. Related to that is, of course, KWL. So imagine you're going to do a reading, and it's a reading about the Egyptian mummies and tombs, and you can use this KWL chart. In the chat box, does anybody know what KWL stands for? Let's find the chat box again. Whoops, there we go. Scrolling down, what does KWL stand for? Does anybody know? Absolute silence? Okay, maybe that's because you don't know. Good, okay, Natalia knows. Yes, it is know, want, and anyone know what the L is? Learn? Yes. Good. Okay, very good. Yes. So the K is what I know, what I already know about this topic. Yeah, you're activating their prior knowledge. What do they already know about Egypt, for example? Then the W is what you want to know. What do you want to learn from this reading, or in general about Egypt? And the L is kind of post-reading activity, what you've learnt. So some course books, for example, ours, in the in the teacher resources, you have various different graphic organizers. So for example, with this particular series that we're looking at, this is Our World. You have these nice tables that you can use and get your students filling in, again, pair work, group work, whole class, lots of different ways of doing it. Right, let's move on. The lesson planner or the teacher book can be, of course, your best friend when you're teaching. And as I said earlier, they usually have formative assessment activities built into them in most course books, but you'll certainly find them more clearly signposted in the teacher book. So unlikely it will say formative assessment in the student book, but in your teacher book, you might have these nice boxes with tips or suggestions on how to formatively assess your students, what little formative assessment exercise you could do. So here, for example, yes, if you want to see how they are understanding the present continuous tense, you can hold up different pictures and get them to respond. Or here, you can see what the students are actually capable of in terms of, they've obviously been talking about different traits, and you can see where they're at in their learning. So let's just take this lesson, grammar lesson. This is for 5th of primary, 5th grade. And imagine you've taught the grammar books, and you've taught them about used to. Did you used to? So you've gone through all the grammar. And imagine you want to just check, before you move on to the next exercise, the exercise 1, you want to check to see how well the students have grasped the grammar, or how confident they feel, or how well they've understood your grammar presentation, for example. Well, one way of doing it that I like is you can get them to show you from their fists. They hold up their fists, and if they've understood not so much, they just give you a 1. If they've understood and it's so easy and they totally get it, they can give you a 5. Okay, but that allows you to see where all your students are at just by showing their hands, and they can give you different numbers of how confident they feel. And if, of course, everybody just puts 1, or if they keep their fists shut, then obviously you're going to have to adapt your teaching, do some extra presentation, give some more examples to ensure your students are confident before you move on. Another system that other teachers use, at the beginning of the term, you give your students each a different coloured piece of paper representing the traffic lights. Red is obviously danger, haven't understood. Green is go, totally understood. Amber, not so much, which is a really nice way of, again, gauging how your whole class is understanding. And another very simple one, of course, is thumbs up, thumbs down. Do you get it, not get it? Yes, no. Shall we move on? Yes, no. So that would be after a grammar presentation, for example. You can adapt it and use it for whatever you're teaching. If we then go on to the controlled practice, so really easy to formatively assess the whole class with this kind of activity, because you just check through the answers and then you can get a show of hands after each question to see how many got it right. Or at the end of all of them, you can ask who got 5 out of 5, 4 out of 5. Quick and easy way, which I'm sure you all do, quick and easy way to see how much the students have struggled or not struggled with it. And it essentially allows you to adjust the learning journey, add in more or less exercises. You can use the additional worksheets, you can use things from the workbook, and you can use different activities on your classroom presentation tool, for example. If you're teaching online, which may or may not have to happen, a really great tool is the Whiteboard FI. I don't know if you know it already. This just allows you to see your students' whiteboards. So you create a class, all your students log in just like they would for Kahoot, for example, same idea. And then they all get a whiteboard. So you create a class, they log in, and this is their whiteboard and they can write on it. And then you as a teacher, you can see all of your students' whiteboards. Your student can only see your whiteboard and their own. And so you also can then clear all the whiteboards and go on to the next question. And it's just a really nice way for you to be able to see what everyone's doing at the same time. That's just if you're online rather than in a physical class, it's a nice tool that you might want to make use of. Moving on. So we've looked at the controlled practice for the grammar. Then, of course, we have freer practice afterwards, once you're sure your students are more confident. So you might have a speaking activity or you might have a writing activity like this one you see on the right. And, of course, what you can do is walk around, check their writing, or if they're speaking, monitor their speaking, and then standard error correction. Obviously, congratulate them first on how well they've done, but then we'll just say a few little things I noticed. I'd just like you to decide what's wrong, how can you correct the mistakes, what's wrong in these sentences that some of you in this group wrote. It's always a good idea to use things from your actual group because it's personalized that way, it's relevant to them. And you can do this as a whole class, or I prefer to get them doing it in pairs, and then feedback as a class. And then if they're struggling to work out what the mistake is, then you can of course circle where the mistake is and then they correct it. So that's writing. Then we can also, of course, formatively assess any speaking activities. And what I like to do with speaking activities is turn all of them into either a fluency workshop or a class mingle. Class mingles, find somebody who, for example, is particularly good, but sometimes in your classes, you might not have the physical space to have that class mingle, or you just know your students and you know that they're not going to mingle and they tend to just go with the cool kids and they don't want to talk to the others. So what I do in those situations, when I don't have the space or I know they're not going to mingle, I do a fluency workshop. So students are sitting in their tables and they're in their pairs, for example, and they do the activity, the speaking activity with this partner. And then after 3 minutes, I say, okay, this student has to go one space back so that they all rotate so that everybody has a new partner. And then exactly the same thing. You're just doing exactly the same speaking activity again, but with your new partner. Okay, same questions, same language, same grammar and vocabulary, but repeated multiple times. Maybe this time you do it with a shorter time period. So whereas it was 3 minutes before, maybe this time it's only 2 minutes. But the idea is it's more fluent. You're more confident. You know what you're going to say now, and maybe you've had the chance to monitor and give them some useful information. And of course, it allows you as a teacher a lot longer to monitor and pick up on any any errors that you can then work on with an error correction. Or what I really like to do is I used to walk around with a clipboard, and on that clipboard I would have lots and lots of post-it notes. And then if I heard a mistake, typical mistake in Spain where I live and I've taught for many years, is students will say people is very happy, or I am agree. And I'd write the sentence that they said, and then I'd cross out the word that's wrong. So for example, people is, cross it out, write people are. And then I'd take that post-it and I'd tell them to put it on the back page, the inside back page of their student books. And then that's really great formative assessment because they can refer back to it again and again. So when you come to do a next fluency workshop, or when you next hear them make that mistake, because these kind of mistakes are a bit like ticks. They keep doing them even though they know they're wrong. And you can just open the book and show them that they made that mistake last week and they need to stop making that mistake. And it's a record, it's a visible record for them there. And it also shows, of course, that you are listening to them and it's personalized. It's a really nice, simple activity, and it helps you as well pay attention to what they're saying. So it's a great idea. Clipboard full of post-it notes. So yes, the idea here is repetition. And as I'm sure you all know, as experienced teachers, repeating exercises or tasks is a really safe way to assess young learners. And young learners are used to repetition. Repetition of activities is a really important part of their learning. And you know that learning has taken place if your students can repeat an activity more quickly and more accurately than the first time. So you may or may not, depending on the number of students you have enough time to monitor. Sometimes you just can't get there. I mean, and if you're teaching online, obviously it's very tricky. So imagine you're asking your students to do this think, pair, share activity, and they have to talk about extreme sports. So you might want to get them to record themselves, and you could get them to post those recordings onto a Padlet where you can review them and you can assess them accordingly. But they can also use it for self-assessment, of course. They could even, if they're doing that fluency workshop, record their conversation with partner A, record it again with partner B, and just listen just to themselves, see how much better and more fluent they get as they go along. Really great way to self-assess, or of course for you as a teacher to assess your students. Moving on, exit tickets. Right. What are the advantages of exit tickets? Because we're short on time, I'm just going to use this as a rhetorical question. Exit tickets are a formative assessment tool that's used to check understanding at the end of a lesson. So the opposite to an entry ticket, of course. Tatiana, I can see your hands raised. Do I need to check anything here? Let's see. Can't see anything in the chat. Okay, Tatiana, unless you write something in the chat, I'm going to move on. Okay, no hand, okay. So exit tickets, a great way of assessing your students formatively. It's recommended not to use, if you're using them, don't use a yes/no question or a true/false question, because that doesn't give you enough information. The reason they're so good is, of course, that they give you a really quick snapshot of which students get what you've taught in the lesson and which don't. Gives you data on the students' progress. It can encourage your students to reflect on their learning. We'll talk about that in a bit more detail in just a minute. It holds your students accountable. So you didn't pay attention. Make sure you do next time. It also offers this mode of communication between you and your students. and helps keep your students focused and on task if they know that they're going to have to provide an exit ticket at the end. And it also allows your students to ask questions, depending on how you structure your exit tickets. And related to the reflection, it allows your students to self-assess. So exit tickets can take all sorts of different formats. So for example, here are a few. So literally a little piece of paper, a slip, and you stand by the door at the end of the class and you collect them, and they're not allowed to leave the classroom until you take their slip of paper, their completed split slip of paper. Don't let them try and con you by folding them over and having nothing. So you might want to do a 3-2-1 option. So things I learned today, things I found interesting. Sorry, 3 things I learned, 2 things I found interesting, 1 question I still have. You might want to use the emojis and get them to circle or colour in the emoji that represents how they feel after the lesson. It's a nice one. Or you might want to do an exit slip. You might want to have it pre-prepared and they fill it in. So like these 2 examples. Or you might just want to have a very simple one like the last one here. How confident are you feeling? So lots of different ways you can do it. Another way, because what I found sometimes with the exit slips is it's great, you know, you scare them standing by the door and telling them you have to have you have to receive their exit slip or they're not leaving. But the thing is, then you've got all these tiny bits of paper, and what do you do with them? So you end up with lots of bits of paper. A nice option is a bulletin board, and it's called What's Stuck With You. So what do you remember? What sticks in your mind? What do you remember today? And the way you do this is you put lots of, or you put this chart up, or you just put Post-its up, and you can put numbers on them. So each Post-it will have a number, or each square has a number, and each number belongs to a student. So your number this year is number 1. And at the end of every unit or every week, or however you want to do your exit tickets, your student has to put a Post-it in their square to say what they remember, what stuck with them about that lesson or about that unit or about that week. And it's much freer in that way as well. So some of them might remember more the vocabulary, some of them might remember facts. There's lots of wonderful facts in some young learner books. For example, our book, Our World, has wonderful facts. It might be a grammar point, who knows? But they stick it on there. And the great thing is that, first of all, it's all nice and tidy for you as a teacher, and you can go back and refer to it. You might want them to date it, and they can keep adding to it over the course or over the month. And just put one Post-it on top of another Post-it. So it's a really nice way of keeping those exit notes tidy and being able to refer back to them. Another way of doing exit notes in a more vocal way is, rather than writing, just get them to do this as a speaking activity. So you can put a dice on each table, and the numbers represent the following. You might want to put these up on the board, and of course they roll the dice, and if they get number 2, for example, they have to say, something I learned today is that polar bears have black skin under their white fur, for example, if they've been learning about snow animals. Or of course they roll a number 4. Something I already knew was that polar bears live in the Arctic, for example. It's just a nice speaking activity. It gamifies it, and it still gets them reflecting on what they did. Going back to those exit slips, what can you do with all this data? So once you've collected it, well, you can divide it into, it depends on how many piles you want. I limited it to 3. And you can have 3 groups. So there's those students that fully understand the concept, students who partially understand it, and students that are really quite lost. And then, of course, you can teach to the group rather than teaching every individual student, you can group them and teach to the group whilst the other groups are getting on with some other exercises. So for example, if it's a listening activity, you might want to provide one group with the audio script and they listen again. You might want to provide something more challenging for the ones that totally got it, etc., etc. But yes, grouping them into 3 is quite nice. Games such as board games, or for example, these ones on the classroom presentation tool for Our World, are a great way of receiving formative feedback. You can do all sorts of games, matching games, these kind of games, vocabulary games. You can do hot seat or back to the board. It doesn't really matter. Even things like hangman or spelling games are all indicative of formative assessment. And I'm sure you all use Quizlet and Kahoot. Yeah, games are an opportunity for formative assessment. You just have to be monitoring your students and seeing where they're at, which I'm sure you all do. Projects are also fabulous for many, many reasons. We don't have time to go into them, but of course, one of the things is that they are all evidence of learning. So the projects in Our World have these nice I can statements, which come at the end of a unit as well, which are also great for self-assessment, self-reflection. And review units are, of course, a perfect way to formatively assess in a slightly more formal way. They provide the opportunity to see what your students remember, and also give you the opportunity to reteach or review or revise, depending on the results. And they're also a really good opportunity for your students to see themselves, their strengths and weaknesses. So formative assessment isn't just done by teachers, it is done by the students as well. And of course, there's also the option of peer assessment too. You can do the review and get their peers to correct it in class. And in a way that's, it does much the same as exit tickets, because the students are going over, reflecting, reviewing what they've learned, but it's over a longer period of time. And it also shows the students their own progress, as well as you can see their own progress too. Just regarding self-assessment, in some course books, you'll find boxes like these, which encourage self-reflection. And just on that self-assessing, a nice routine is to get your students thinking at the end of a lesson, end of a unit, what did I do? What did I do in the lesson today? What did I learn? How did I learn? How well did I do? What do I need to do next? And then share it. It's what we always want to do with most things. So this is a great activity to do, especially because then they go home and they tell their parents. And that makes you look like a great teacher. So the trouble with this routine is sometimes they need a bit more guidance. So in terms of what did I do, the first one, you might want to help them and put everything that you've done in a list, but get your students to put them into the correct order. So rather than making them remember every single thing, you can just tell them what they did and put it in the correct order. In terms of what did I learn, you can write the statements for them and then get them to rank them, which is a really interesting way of seeing, different students, the different things that are important to different students. You can also give them this, which is similar to the exit ticket we saw earlier. How well did I do? You can do the smiley faces. Very confident, not very confident, talking about volcanoes in this case. What do I do next? Well, you can ask them, or you can give them some tips, and you can suggest these things. And in terms of sharing, you can suggest these things. Show a picture of a volcano to your family and tell them about it. Ask your family if they know anything else about volcanoes. But really, the sharing really encourages that home-school connection, which is so important. And This one's an interesting one with the how did I learn? See which ways helped you learn the most. So obviously different students have different learning styles. And so seeing what they choose here is always very interesting. So we mentioned that formative assessment is about getting data and using that information to inform our teaching. And you can do that on bits of paper, you can do that by monitoring, but without doubt, digital has really helped this process. Digital really helps with formative assessment because it makes it so much easier to gain an insight into how our students are doing. So if you use a learner management system, so for example, at National Geographic Learning, we have the Spark platform, and we can set homework for our students and they can complete it on their tablets or on their mobiles or on their computers. And they are interactive exercises that are motivating. I don't know if any of you, is anyone a fan of Duolingo here? I'm completely obsessed with Duolingo. I cannot stop using it. Hopefully you guys too, or maybe there's an equivalent where you live. But yeah, gamified learning can be fun. And for the students, it's good because they get this instant feedback. Because the trouble is, of course, with us teachers, especially if we're correcting exercises on our own, as you know, we can't give the feedback instantly, but a platform can. And the students can instantly get their results, understand them, see what they've done wrong, see what they've done right, and review as necessary. And that really helps develop learner autonomy. This is why I'm so obsessed with Duolingo at the moment. I just love it. And for you as a teacher, of course, you have access to a grade book, and with everything marked instantly and all in one place, rather than just disparate bits of work, you can view it as a collective whole. And this means it's much easier to identify the students' strengths and weaknesses. And because you've saved time marking, of course, that gives you more time to analyze and identify which areas your students are acing in or struggling in. So for example, our platform does this grouping. So it puts students into these different cohorts. So students who are low performers with high effort, so they're the ones to really worry about. They're doing badly, even though they're making the effort, they're putting in the time. And then you've got on the other extreme, high performers with high effort. So those are the ones you don't need to worry about too much. They're obviously very, very good. And then you have all the other cohorts as well, but it groups them again. And then that allows you to put students together, working together. And again, like I said earlier, so ones who are struggling with listening, you might want to give them audio scripts. You might want to provide more challenging listenings for ones that are finding it really easy, etc. You can also see, I mean, you can use different views using an LMS. You can also see how students are doing as a class on different assignments. So you can see here, they didn't do too well on the assignment or gradebook test. So you might want to look at that and see what's going wrong there. So you can see, okay, so Elena doing on that assignment, she didn't do too well. The other, David and Raphael, they did okay. But so I need to look at Elena. So I go into Elena and I can see exactly how she did on each individual exercise in that activity. And so I can then even click and see exactly what she got wrong and right if I want to. So I get all this information just at a click, and I can then assign her different tasks to help with her learning. I can also use a different view to see the skills and learning objectives. So I can see here my students in this class, they're not doing too well with the listening or the grammar, but they're doing okay with the other things. So I can, again, focus more if I want to on the listening and grammar until I get that back up to scratch and keep going with that. So yeah, digital is a fabulous way to inform, to assess formally. You can also use, of course, more formal unit tests, but then it's important to remind your students that these unit tests are just unit tests. They're progress tests, not the same as end of year tests. These don't count to their final mark. They're just checking their progress and enabling you, their teacher, to see what they need more help with. They're just quizzes, nothing to be, afraid of. And of course, most learning platforms, ours, for example, allow you to set tests online as well. If you want to save time, if you like using the digital, or if you're teaching online, this is a really good plus. And of course, that brings us to feedback, the importance of feedback. So it's a really important feature of formative assessment. It should be forward-looking, of course. It's not just about the mistakes that were made, it's about how we can improve. And so, as this quote here says, good formative assessment includes feedback that is related to learning goals and provides opportunities for the student to revise and improve work products and deepen understandings. So feedback should stimulate students to improve their own learning, motivate continued student engagement, diagnose student strengths and weaknesses, support students in developing their skills of self-assessment, and provide a profile of what the student has learnt. Oh, sorry. So yes, wherever you can, take time to give feedback. And that brings us to the summary. So it brings us to a close. So in summary, use formative assessment to maximize learning by using entrance or exit tickets, gauging understanding throughout the different stages of a lesson, beginning, during, end, by using games to check comprehension, by using repetition tasks, by incorporating project work, by providing reflection time, by using formative assessment tools, different ones, whether they're digital or not, and by giving that formative feedback. So I'd just like you to reflect on the session, think about what you'll take away from the session, think about what you liked, but maybe you can't do it with your group this year, maybe next year. Things you think are not valid for you or your group, you can put that in the bin. All of the examples were from our series, well, all the images, sorry, were from our series, Our World, Young Learner Series. If you'd like more information, you've got the site there at the top, eltngl.com. And if you have questions, pop it in the Q&A box. We're out of time, but I can get back to you afterwards. And without further ado, I will hand over to Alona to tell you about certificates. Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye.
Yeah, thank you so much, Catherine. Thank you. As you can see, I don't have any electricity, so that's what we have. Catherine, thank you so much for such an amazing talk, and it was just amazing and brilliant. I think we do have lots of takeaways from this session, and so many thanks to you. Okay, so back to the certificates talk, because we are running out of time. So the first thing before the certificate is that it's a Christmas time, everybody, and it would be really good to give you a 120 days of free access to Spark. I will send you the form that you can use. By filling the form, you will get 120 days of free access to Spark. Any title that you would like to try out. You've seen that Catherine and Alex showed a lot of titles like Look and Our World that will be really good for your students. And if you are interested in that, I'm gonna send you the link to the chat. So you can fill in this form and you will get this 120 days of access. So please feel free to fill in that, and you will get your access to their books. Okay, and the certificates. You will get your certificates within 1 working day. So it will be tomorrow in your inbox, or if something goes wrong, it will be in your inbox on Monday. Hopefully everything is going to be okay. So it will be with you tomorrow. And thank you so much for joining us today. It was amazing and great. And thank you so much to our speakers, to Alex and Catherine. Thank you so much for so much interesting things. So many interesting
Our pleasure.
things. Yeah. And we are looking forward to see you again. And you guys too. It will be really, really great to see you with us very soon, hopefully.
Let's hope so. Thank you, Alona. And once again, thank you to all of you for sharing your Thursday afternoon with us. Stay safe, stay well, and see you all next time.
Take good care.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.